And that was Alison Krauss and Gillian Welch singing I'll Fly Away. And you might recognize that from the Oh Brother, Where Art Thou soundtrack that came out a few years ago now. And I was so excited about playing that song that I completely forgot to mention something else in the topic of why birds migrate. And that is kind of the immediate reasons why birds might migrate. So not the evolutionary reasons that might be related to escaping things that are unpleasant during the winter, in the breeding grounds, or finding things that are particularly nice during the summer in those same places. But also the idea that, what is it that triggers them to go away from the breeding ground to the wintering ground or vice versa? And that is, as you probably all might guess, the fact that we have changing weather and photo periods. So the birds are sensitive to the length of days and the amount of light, and also there is some sensitivity to the wind conditions and the temperatures, such that kind of once the photo period changes so that they know that it's about time to leave, they might wait a few days in order to optimize particular weather conditions so that they know that they're maximizing their likelihood of actually getting to their final destination, whichever that may be, their wintering or breeding grounds. So there are different extents of migration, and one of them is complete migration, which obviously is where you've got everyone in the group leaving the breeding area after raising their families. So that might be species such as barn swallows, lots of different warblers do this, things like wheat ears and cuckoos. All of them in the species will leave a certain area so that they're only there during the breeding season and then take off and go somewhere else for the wintering season and then come back again later. And most complete migrants are birds that breed in temperate northern climates and then they winter in the south. And that includes both the southern bit of the northern hemisphere and also the southern hemisphere, as I kind of alluded to earlier. And these birds can often travel incredible distances between breeding and non-breeding habitats. And I'll discuss that a little bit more when I talk about migration styles in more detail. But we're talking thousands of miles here, and it's really impressive the amount of effort they put in to go from one location to another. And then we also have partial migrants. And these are migrations that occur when some but not all individuals will leave the breeding area. And a great example of this from my own childhood is American robins, which are related to your blackbirds. They look very similar. And these guys, when I was young, they used to all take off together and they used to do complete migration. But then as the habitats became very much more anthropogenic and they had lots of food sources left out for them during the winter, they kind of changed their habitats, and this was all their habits, sorry. And this was also driven by the fact that we did have some changing weather patterns. And now these birds are partial migrants, so that we do have some robins that will hang around during the winter, but then you also do see huge flocks that will show up again in the spring, and you have a big population increase at that time. And around here, species that do this are also chaffinches, your version of robins, the European robin, lapwings, coots, and starlings are all examples. And there may be some overlap with these species between their breeding and non-breeding ranges, so that again, you've got species that, maybe they're in England, but then they'll just move elsewhere in England for one part of the year versus the other part of the year. So they just kind of go much shorter distances when they do move. So migration styles, there are lots of different things that you can look at to kind of classify different types of migration, or different aspects and methods of migrating. So one thing that's important to look at is the flight itinerary, which is not the scientific term for it, but that's basically, I think, what most people would classify it as if they look at it. So this is whether or not birds are performing long, non-stop flights or breaking up into little bits and doing lots of little trips. So the long flights are particularly common when you've got routes that go over inhospitable places, such as mountains and oceans and deserts. And we have lots of species that will fly, for instance, over the Sahara. And they can't really stop in the middle of that because where are they going to go? It's really hot, there's no food or water, or very little food or water. There's probably not going to be a place for them to sit down and be nice and comfortable or safe. And so basically they just have to do the whole thing in one go. On the other hand, you do have migrants that will go in hops. So they might move maybe 150 or 200 miles maximum in several short little bursts, and then they'll stop in between to refuel. And this is obviously quite useful because that means you don't have to put on as much weight and eat as much food before the journey in order to fuel all of your work, your muscle effort. But it also can be something that's not planned. So an event called fallout is what happens when you've got huge groups of birds that will accumulate in a given area because of bad weather. So you might have a big flock of different species that are all flying south to their wintering grounds, and suddenly a hurricane or a tornado or just a really big thunderstorm shows up. And a lot of these guys will keep trying to fly no matter how bad the weather is, and others will immediately kind of see that the conditions are bad and come down as soon as they notice. But either way, you've got all these birds that just have to get out of the sky and find some place to wait out the storm. And sometimes they do get injured, sometimes they get blown off course, and so you've got all sorts of unfortunate circumstances in which all these guys will just come down to earth wherever they happen to be at the time. And these are really popular among birders because they can see quite unusual species that don't normally stop in their area. And of course, in the Isles of Scilly, for instance, we do have this happening a lot. And even around here, we'll get birds that get blown off course because of bad weather, and they'll have little fallouts, individuals coming one or two at a time. And even though they are quite popular, they can be kind of depressing if you're thinking about things from the bird's point of view, because these are conditions that can kill hundreds of birds in a single go because of the wind or the rain or whatever. And so it really shows you just how difficult it is for these animals to get where they're going safely. So one of the choices that birds have to make if they are migrating is when they're going to fly. So there are basically two different types of birds. You've got your diurnal migrants and your nocturnal migrants. And for the most part, and this is a huge generalization, diurnal migrants are birds that eat resources that are available primarily during the day, so things like insects. And these guys, they need to eat, and so they need to time their migration so that either right before they take off or right after they come down, they can get a bit of food so that they don't just completely deplete their resources. So this is what we see in swallows, for instance. They have to time things so that they can still have a little bit of food but also do a lot of flight in a given day. And actually, to mention the Isles of Scilly again, I've been there before with field courses from the University of Exeter, and one of the most amazing things was when we were out in the middle of the ocean on a little boat to look at the puffins. And we looked up and there were these migrating swallows going past at like 9 o'clock in the morning. And they had started their journey several hours before, further south of us on the continent. So they had woken up in the morning, had a few bites to eat, and then just taken off. And they had flown steadily all that time, and here they were almost on the shores of mainland England. And it was just really incredible, and you can see the amount of effort that gets put into these amazing flights. Now, other birds that need to migrate during the day are the ones that depend on thermal winds or updrafts. And these are the rising currents of warm air that help provide lift. And I'll talk a little bit about lift in a minute when I talk about how flight happens. And an example of this is hawks, or as you guys would call them, buzzards. So these guys can kind of be broken down into soarers and non-soarers. And these are guys that either rise by circling within air pockets and then glide between the pockets with a few wing beats at a time, or you've got powered migrants. So you've got things like blackbirds and swallows. And both of these types of birds are birds that do need a bit of help with their flight because it is difficult, obviously, to get up in the air and to stay there. And so it's beneficial to them to use these warm periods when they can get a bit of help from the air currents. And for soarers, you're going to see a concentration of activity in the midday hours when the thermals are at their peak. But for the non-soarers, you might find that they're often crepuscular, which is one of my all-time favorite words. And that means basically right at dawn or right as the evening is starting. So kind of in those periods when you see the shift between day and night. And so the non-soarers will often begin their flight right before dawn, fly mostly in the early afternoon and maybe a little bit in the late afternoon, but then kind of rest in between and have some food. Now for the nocturnal migrants, these are going to be birds that are, again, the powered flight, the non-soarers, the warblers and the thrushes. And these guys can benefit from flying at night by avoiding most of their predators and also taking advantage of the calmer and more stable air that happens at night because you don't have those big pockets of air that are rising up from the ground. And also, as you might expect, doing all this flight can generate quite a lot of heat because they are really using their muscles. And so having the cooling air at that time can actually help reduce their body heat and keep them from overheating during all of this effort. And a lot of these guys will begin their trips around a half hour after sunset. So they've eaten all day and they've bulked up, and then they take off. And it seems like maybe this takeoff time has to do with the fact that the sun is still on the horizon but going down, but at the same time you've got maybe the moon coming out, depending on time of year, and also the stars coming out. And so this allows the birds to use a bunch of different cues at once to figure out where it is that they need to go. So how far are these guys going to fly? Well, as I said before, there are some birds that go huge distances, and these guys are known as long-distance migrants, obviously. And they will often go between continents, not just within continents. So a great example of this, the kind of classic example that everyone always talks about, is the red knots. And these guys will fly from Argentina to Brazil, then from Brazil to the Delaware Bay in the US on the East Coast, and then from the Delaware Bay up to the Arctic. And overall, that entire trip is about 7,000 miles one way. And they do that in time for the summer breeding season up in the Arctic, and that really only lasts a matter of weeks. So they get up there, they immediately get to business, and then they take off again and fly all that way in return. So they're doing 14,000 miles a year in order to move between breeding and wintering grounds, which is probably farther than I go in a single year. So I mean, it's just incredible to think about the distance these guys are covering under their own wing power. And you see similarly long trips in things like blue-winged teals, which will also winter in South America and then breed in the northern plains of the US and Canada as well, I guess I should mention. Now, short-distance migrants are ones that will move more often within continents, and these can include also birds that will do what's called altitudinal migration, and that's where basically they're staying in the same place, so a certain mountain that they live on, but they're just moving up or down depending on the time of year. So they might be up at the top during the summer, and then in the winter they'll go down to the lowland areas in order to escape the cold. So it's basically the same principles. You want to stay away from where it's cold and where you can't get your food. It's just done vertically instead of horizontally. And this is a short journey in most cases, but can be associated with huge changes in lifestyle because the birds will then roost in different places, maybe eat different types of food, hang out with other different species around them. So it is quite a change for them. And birds that do this include things like skylarks and meadow pipits and snow buntings. And as I mentioned before, there's something called molt migration. And this, again, is where you've got migration to a place where you can molt without being disturbed by predators. And this is kind of different and distinct from these other forms of migration because it doesn't have to do with the temperature or the food availability, but instead is focused on safety. And one of the species that does this is the shell duck. And one of the things we see is that this guy will fly to Heligoland in the North Sea, or a little more close to Bridgewater Bay in Somerset. And these are places where you can really see huge amounts of shell ducks accumulating at the right time of year. And they go immediately after the breeding season, shed all of their feathers once they get there, hang out where it's relatively safe because there aren't predators that can access them there. They slowly grow back their feathers, and then once they're able to fly again, they head back to where they were before.